Steve Dettelbach just said the most stereotypically government thing I have ever heard, second only to just following orders. On Monday, speaking at the Harvard Institute of Politics, he told the ivory tower people of Harvard that the ATF has a database of every gun sale and a record of who owns what. But they're not violating the law because that database isn't searchable. Hello folks, and welcome back to the channel. The ATF director actually gave us a treasure trove of information during this little 1-hour chat, though I'll be covering the second big admission in a separate video because I think each thing deserves its own attention. I'll try to bring you that one tomorrow. Anyway, Dettelbach gave a talk on the 2 pillars of gun control that the ATF is already working on to curb violence and reduce American access to firearms, and what he believes the ATF needs to do next. The question at hand was, what data does the ATF already have? In response, he stated that the ATF can already follow the gun as it travels from gun shop to buyer. In fact, he explained that following the gun is the core of ATF operations.
Our ability to follow the gun. And that's really at the core of so much of what we do at ATF, right?
Like perhaps the increase in knock and talks we've seen under the Biden administration? He says that the ATF already has an e-trace data network that allows them to trace crime guns to their first retail sale. But in order to trace a gun to a retail sale, you need to have a record of that sale and all the other times that it changed hands before it even became a crime gun. Which begs the question, how exactly do they do that without a registry? Well, that gets a little tricky because he says that Congress doesn't allow the ATF to have a searchable registry, and the ATF follows that law meticulously.
We take the laws as Congress passes them and we follow them.
Gotcha.
And Congress has said that we're not allowed to have a national gun registry, and Congress has said that we're not allowed to have certain types of searchable databases, right? And we follow those rules meticulously because in our constitutional form of government, when there's a law passed, you follow it.
By using Adobe and asking Adobe to take the search function out of the ATF's version of the program. Here it is, straight from the horse's mouth.
Congress has set limits on how much data we can keep. I am the only, and we can't have a firearms registry. There's a law that says ATF can't have a firearms registry.
Right.
So I am the only, as far as I know, I'm the only customer of Adobe Acrobat who we at ATF pay them extra money to remove search function from their product, so that we can comply with what Congress has mandated.
So they have a database that uses Adobe, but they had Adobe remove the search function so that it technically is not searchable by congressional standards. It's funny to hear that from the alphabet organization that's always complaining about loopholes. I mean, isn't Control F a thing? Doesn't that still exist? There are other ways to search things other than the search function in Adobe. Anyone? He goes on to say that because the search function has been disabled, but of course can be re-enabled at any time, there are people at the ATF whose job it is to go through all the scanned records or boxes of paperwork when the ATF decides to do a trace. A trace in their mountains of data and records that are not a database. Now, he does tell the moderator that the ATF doesn't have records of current FFLs in business and can't get those records without talking to them. But we also have countless reports of the ATF going in and taking photos of all of a dealer's 4473s during standard audits, which is also illegal. But I mean, the ATF would never do an illegal thing to put those records in another illegal thing. I mean, that would just be something that government would absolutely do. He also says that there are people at the ATF whose entire job it is to take out staples, paper clips, and flatten out damaged, folded, or creased 4473s, which, why would you do that if not to scan them into a digital database? Otherwise, it seems like a really good way to lose pieces of paperwork.
And there are these people wonderful people who sit at our facility in Martinsburg, West Virginia. And they sit at tables. And their job is to go through these boxes and boxes, an endless number of boxes, right? There's always more boxes, right? Millions of them, and take out the staples. And if there's waterlogged ones, flatten them. And take off the clips and separate them every day, all day, from 9 in the morning till 5 at night. That's their job. Not one or two, a whole group of people.
And he assures the audience they get millions upon millions upon millions of these records in each month. In fact, he calls them endless. Endless boxes of 4473s.
And they come in boxes, boxes and boxes, millions a month of these records.
That somehow only belong to criminals. He then goes on to say that each trace is a manual search, but that search could be in a box or on a computer screen. A screen that is on a digital database that isn't a digital database because they're not supposed to have one, but uses Adobe Acrobat, but also isn't searchable because the search function has been turned off, and yet sometimes they can turn around and have a trace in a matter of hours. They must be really good at their jobs. He claims this information isn't of law-abiding people, that they're not tracing law-abiding people, but by the government's own statistics, there aren't millions and millions of new criminals popping up every month, and those criminals don't typically purchase their guns legally. I mean, that's what NICS is supposed to be for.
The drivers of violent crime, the individuals, the very few, because all the data shows is that there's, this many people who commit crime, and a very small group of those people are shooters and trigger pullers.
So the information in this database can't be anything but the information of law-abiding Americans. And even despite the cranking up of raids and revoked FFLs, I feel like there are not enough of them getting shut down for the ATF to have millions upon millions upon millions of endless boxes of new records coming in. I mean, there are that many gun sales every month, so that would be plausible. But that's the information they're not supposed to have, which is the funniest thing. Now, the ATF and fact-checkers have been denying the existence of this database for years. Claims say missing context or skip right to calling it a wild conspiracy theory with no basis in reality. No basis except ATF actions and now direct quotes from the director himself. Quotes which conveniently are being left out of all of the non-gun community coverage of this event. I would love to say where this goes, nobody knows, but we all know that's a crock of crap, and we know that nothing is going to happen. Because it's not a bug, it's a feature. Maybe if we get lucky, there will be a letter and a little congressional committee and then a hearing, but so what? When in the history of the entire world has there been a government that gave back rights that they had taken away? That's it for this video, guys. As usual, thanks for tuning in and happy shooting.